What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another top 5 video to do with you guys. This one I'm really excited to do. As usual, a lot of you guys are maybe going to agree with me, and I'm sure a whole bunch of you will hate my list and not agree with me at all. That's totally fine. This is just my list. Keep in mind, it's going to be different for every single person because we all use knives for different things and have sort of accumulated different types of knowledge from different experiences, and everything leads to a different result. Anyways, let's go ahead and progress here. If you have not done so already, make your way over to Nick Shabazz's channel. I'll leave a link in the description, and check out his Best New Gear Reviewer contest. My channel has been entered in that contest. If you are enjoying my content and you want to leave me a positive review, fill out a form for my channel. That would mean the world to me. While you're there, check out the other channels that are on that list, because there are a ton of good gear review channels that are in that contest, and I think a lot of them deserve you guys' attention too. Anyways, let's move on here. The knife in front of you is the Spyderco Delica. And this is actually the ZDP 189 version of the Spyderco Delica. If we can find a way to get that to show. There we go. Right there. The Hunter green or Ranger green, or I always forget which green this is. ZDP 189 is not one of my favorite steels. Not one of my top 5 favorite steels. It is, however, an honorable mention because I think it's a great steel. The edge retention is really good. The toughness is also really good. It's one of those weird knives where I'm not sure if it's actually, I don't think it's quite stainless. It has a high chromium, if I remember correctly, ZDP 189 has a high chromium content, but it also has an absurdly high carbon content, which makes its stainless properties, for me at least, hard to pin down. On top of that, it's usually kind of an expensive steel, and it leaves this feeling in my mind of, and I'm kind of babying it. I've heard that it can be a little bit chippy, and so I always feel like I'm a little bit reserved. The times that I've actually had ZDP 189 knives in my pocket, I'm a little bit more reserved with that steel. And if I'm reserved, then it means I'm never going to put the knife through, what a knife should be used for, which is just to be used and then put back in the pocket. So ZDP 189 is an honorable mention. Next up, for honorable mentions, this is going to make some people upset, because I'm sure that a lot of you guys are thinking that this steel should be on anybody's top 5 list. But I'm going to go ahead and get it over with. Cpm M4 is not one of my top 5 favorite steels, and I'm sure you guys are like, what? Unsubscribed immediately. You don't know what you're talking about. You're an idiot. Hear me out. M4 has incredible edge retention, similar to M390, 20CV, CTS 204P, all of those steels that are the same, but it has amazing toughness. Now, what it lacks is corrosion resistance. That's not why it is not on my top 5 list. It's not on my top 5 list because, a lot like ZDP 189, in fact, more so, I am so concerned with, my M4 blades, getting corrosion on them or chipping, because I'm so afraid to have to resharpen them or get like a blemish on the blade that I can't get back out. And so all of my M4 knives just end up getting babied and they never get used. Even the ones that I've had where I'll get one that's coated and I'll be like, I'm going to use this one, and then I never do. Case in point, that Blade HQ exclusive Para 3 that I said 100% for sure I was going to use, and then I just never used it. So M4 is an amazing blade steel, and a lot of people swear by it, and I'm sure it is. It makes an amazing user steel. But as far as me personally, what steels that I will actually put to use that can measure up to what the steel is made for, I'm never really going to use M4 like it should be. And I know I should get over that, because I just made a whole bunch of people mad. Moving on, the third runner-up is actually going to be Cpm S30v. Cpm S30v is one of the only knife steels on my list that was actually made specifically for pocket knives. I'm looking around to see if there's anything else on the table that's S30v. Of course, the Shaman. the S30V is one of the most well-rounded steels out there. The reason it doesn't make my top 5 list is because it's freaking boring. S30V is on everything. It has pretty good edge retention. It's got meh toughness. It's stainless, and it's, you know, it's on knives that I regularly use. The PM2 that you're seeing in front of you here doesn't really get used. It's mainly just for a size comparison, but these two get used all the time, and I love them. Would I love them a lot more in a different steel? Yes, absolutely. So S30V is another honorable mention. It's not actually going to make my list. I know a lot of people swear by it, but I think a lot of you can agree with me. S30V is just boring. It's just a boring steel. And you see it on everything, especially a lot of Spyderco stuff. I don't know, we didn't do a close-up Cpm S30v. Now that I can actually do quality close-ups, I'm doing them more often now. So, all right, let's move on to my true top 5 list. Okay, I'm so sorry. I actually have one more honorable mention. I forgot that I was going to mention it. So the last honorable mention before we actually move on to my true top 5 list is going to be, let me pull this knife out of its sheath because the two knives that I have to represent this steel are fixed blades. It's going to be 1095 high carbon steel or 1095 steel. It's 1095 is not special anymore. It's just, I don't know if this actually shows it on there. Both the SC3 that you're seeing in front of you and the SC Azula, these are both sporting 1095. And it is a great steel for just going out and just beating the crap out of it. But it's not a special steel anymore. You know, you see it on, I know fans of the Great Eastern Cutlery knives are like, hey, you know, come on, our knives are made out of that. 1095 is a great steel. It's not an expensive steel. You can use it. You know, you can resharpen it. It's very, very susceptible to corrosion. On top of that, it just doesn't. It's kind of the same feeling that I get with S30V. I'm bored with it, and it doesn't make me feel like I'm using something special. And I know that that's a stupid thing to say or think, but I can't help it. You know, my experience with knives has led me to be that way. You know, I really like a steel that I can enjoy just thinking in my head like, I've got this steel in my pocket right now. I'm about to use this. And you know, all of the properties together kind of create that feeling for me. And despite 1095 being a good steel and a steel that a lot of people prefer, it's just not in my top 5. But it definitely is an honorable mention because of how, you know, I can take either of these knives out or any knife in 1095 and just use them, despite the SC3 is actually brand new. I haven't even done the review on it yet. But the Azula, I can take it out and use it, no problem. You know, I don't have a problem with that at all. These are great user steels, and they generally 1095 blades are not super expensive, so you can go out and beat on them without really having to feel bad about it. Okay, now, truly on to my top 5 favorite blade steels. Number 1, or I guess number 5. Let's go 5 backwards. And the knife in the number 1 category, just know, actually is my very favorite blade steel. So number 5 on my list is D2. D2 is an awesome steel, not only because it's inexpensive, but because it's got pretty darn good edge retention. It's almost stainless, 12% chromium out of the 14 that's required to be considered actually stainless. And it is amazingly tough. This knife, as I have said many times on my channel, has been beaten into the ground. D2, in my opinion, is not hard to resharpen or touch up. And it's such a workhorse. You know, you can take it out, beat on it, not feel bad. You don't have to baby it or constantly oil it to, you know, to keep corrosion off of it. Sometimes you do. I mean, more so than a stainless steel, but not nearly as much as M4 or 1095. You know, so I take this knife out. The fact that, you know, a lot of D2 knives are running between 20 and 60 bucks, that's great, especially in the case of the Rat 1. Huge fan of D2. I'm not a fan of D2 on knives that cost hundreds of dollars. We have a manufacturer out there who I really do like for a long time. You guys will know who I'm talking about. Making really, really expensive knives out of D2 steel. And as good a steel as it is, I'm comfortable paying I would say under $100 for D2, and that's about it. But D2 is an awesome steel. It absolutely makes my list here. So, all right, moving on. The next steel on my list, another knife that I have not reviewed, this is the Boker Kalashnikov. This is Cts Xhp. Cts Xhp absolutely makes my list. It is comparable to S30v, except I think, guys, it has better edge retention, but isn't quite as tough, but it's about as stainless. For that reason, I really like it. And case in point with this, Cts Xhp can be found on extremely expensive knives, and it can also be found on extremely inexpensive knives. You know, I've got a really good example of that. It'll just be one sec. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Now, fans, longtime subscribers of my channel will recognize this knife immediately, as it has appeared on other top 5 videos on my channel. This knife is also made out of Cts Xhp, or the blade is, but it is a much more expensive knife. This is the Beg Knives, Beg Knives Bugatti. This is a custom Bugatti with a Cts Xhp compound ground mirror polished blade. Beautiful mirror polish on that blade. Now, the nice thing about Cts Xhp is not only can it be found on knives that are extremely expensive and inexpensive, but you have those qualities, and it will actually take a really amazing mirror polish. And that's awesome. Some people might view that as kind of you can get the Kalashnikov and XHP for $60, and you have to pay $2,500 for the Bugatti. Well, the Bugatti's got a lot of other stuff going on for it. You know, mainly the fact that it's, you know, exotic materials and it's hand ground and handmade. But XHP, given the fact that I can get it for not a lot of money, and it's got really awesome qualities, it's not hard in my opinion to resharpen, and it's stainless, I think it makes an excellent everyday carry option. And it is absolutely the number 4 blade steel on my list there. So I really enjoy CTS Xhp. Moving on here, my number 3 favorite steel. And this is going to come as a major surprise, I think, to a lot of you guys. But I'm being honest here. My number 3 favorite steel, I'm picking up all the knives that I have on the table that are in this steel because I've got a lot of them, is going to be M390. You can see right there on this Benchmade Griptilian. This is the DLT exclusive version of the Benchmade Griptilian with carbon fiber and the brass standoffs. You can see up there M390. A whole bunch of other stuff. M390 is also the same as 20CV. You can see there on the very heavily used Hinderer clips. The half track, this one's in 20CV. Or I'm sorry, I said half track. Full track, that's the new Hinderer full track. I've got another Hinderer in M390. So that's the same steel. And what else do I have up here? The Microtech SOCOM Elite in M390. What else? Do I have anything else? Let's go around real quick. Not that I brought... Oh, yeah. The Hogue. The Hogue Ritter, or the Hogue RSK MK1 G2 is also an M390. So a lot of people like M4 are going to go, are you serious? This should be everybody's favorite steel of all time. The love that I have for M390 is like, if I was going to pay, like let's say I was unbelievably rich and I was going to get myself like a $10,000 custom knife or whatever, like the most insane custom folding knife ever. I would have that knife made out of probably M390 or Damasteel or some weird cobalt Damasteel or so. I don't know. M390 would be one of my choices because to a lot of people, M390 is considered like the most premium powder metallurgy steel. And I think for good reason. M390 has unbelievable edge retention, a lot like Cpm M4, though I think it is slightly better. It has incredible corrosion resistance, but lacks toughness. But for that reason, a lot of people really prefer it for EDC blades that they're not going to beat on. Now, I have multiple Hinderers up here that are made out of either 20CV or M390, and they do well. I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with blade geometry. If it's really thick behind the edge, I think it's probably going to resist chipping a little better than an M390 blade that's extremely thin behind the edge. You know, like the Ritter Hogue here, you can see the difference in blade thickness between these two. Substantial, or better yet, the M390 thickness, the starting thickness of the SOCOM Elite. Though I think the way that the blade is ground on the Elite actually brings it gets pretty thin behind the edge as well. But a lot of that has to do with blade geometry. So M390 is definitely, absolutely one of my favorite blade steels ever. I really, really like it. But I'm a little bit more reserved with M390 than other steels, or the number 2 and number 1 position on my list, because M390 tends to be pretty expensive. The least expensive I have ever seen 20CV or M390 was on the DLT exclusive version of the Manix 2, that red 20CV. That was $130. That was the least expensive 20CV or M390 knife I've ever seen, but it's not in continuous production. Beyond that, I think the Ritter Hogue right now is about the least expensive, you know, at least the least expensive USA made M390 knife at $155. We'll see if that price stays the same. I'm not convinced that it will. But yeah, M390 absolutely on my list. So let me take a sec to clear all these knives off the table that I used needlessly for an example. I probably could have done that with just one knife, but when I do these top 5 knives, you can't see it, but off camera, my entire table is just filled with knives. They're all over the place. And it's just so that I can grab whatever I want whenever I need it. Anyways, number 2. The number 2 steel on my list that I prefer is going to be, and we'll use another hinderer for this, S35VN. I love S35VN steel because it is very similar to S30V, but it's a little bit more interesting in the fact this is the Buck 110 Ultimate 100 DLT version, the USA made, and S35VN with the nickel bolsters and the micarta scales, just used to represent that. And the third knife that I'll use to represent it is my Steelcraft series bag knives 3/4 Quaken in S35VN. Let me see if I can find it. Where does it say S30? Oh, is this one where it says like it's like right at the top? I don't know. This knife is S35VN. You'll just have to trust me. Anyways, S35VN. Here's the reason I like it. It can be found right. Isn't there a weird knife out there right now that's like it's S35VN and it's like 50 or 60 bucks? I don't know what it is. I know a really cheap S35VN knife exists, but S35VN has similar stainless qualities to S30V. It's a little bit less stainless, but still absolutely a stainless steel. It has similar edge retention. It used to be thought that S35VN had the same or better edge retention than S30V, but I think over time we found that S35VN has slightly less overall edge retention than S30V. And that is all based on, you know, that depends on the heat treat and blah, blah, blah. And you have to be using the exact same knife. They have to be ground exactly the same way. But like S30V also, it is another steel. I think the only other steel on my list that was specifically designed for folding knives. It was partially developed like S30V by Chris Reeve, who a lot of you, of course, most of you will know is who makes the Sebenza, and he's the father of the frame lock. I love S35VN because of its added toughness over S30V, and it's easier to sharpen, definitely. Not by a whole lot, but it's noticeably, in my opinion, it's noticeably easier to sharpen than S30V. This is another one. A lot of these knives that I'm showing are David's knives. You guys will know who David is if you've been subscribed to me for a long time. These really used hinderers are definitely his, but I don't have nearly as much of a reservation using S35VN because it's not a super duper special steel, but it's still definitely premium. It's a powder metallurgy steel, and I can go out and I can beat on it harder than M390 and not feel as bad. And a lot of times you can get really, really cool, fun to carry knives in S35VN. So, you know, it's a steel to me that I really don't have a problem using, and I can feel a little better about it. It's more special to me than S30V, and I don't know, I just have a better mental connection with it. It is also, in my opinion, it's kind of fun to sharpen because it feels like, I don't know, I make progress on it a little faster. I'm not a professional at sharpening. I'm actually learning a little bit at a time, and I found that I prefer to sharpen some steels over others. 1095 is easy to sharpen. S35VN is easy. D2 I don't have a problem with. Steels like that are easier for me to sharpen. And then the edge that they take, the S35N edge, it just feels better after I get to a point where I can say I'm done. I can achieve the sharpness that I want on S35VN faster, I guess, and then not feel as bad about using it or dulling it. Okay, there is one steel left, and I'm sure you guys are like, what the heck? He's named off like the most popular steels that we see on some of the most premium knives out there. What is it? Is it going to be something exotic? Is it going to be something common? What's it going to be? Maybe a few of you can guess, and yes, I'm purposefully drawing this out and making it very, tense and theatrical. Maybe a few of you can guess, because I've said it before. And while I will say this, M390, it's like I said when I covered M390. M390 is my favorite steel in terms of like a steel that I would put on a knife that, that would be like almost a decoration in my house, just like a safe queen. But we're talking about these steels, my favorite steels to actually use. So all things considered, the stainless properties, the edge retentive properties, the toughness properties, the cost, my connection with it as far as it being a special steel that makes me feel good to use, but is also really easy to maintain. My absolute favorite user steel out there has to be 154 CM or CPM 154. Now, for those of you who don't know, 154 CM is the non-powder metallurgic version of CPM 154. I honestly don't care. I mean, if I have my choice, I'd rather have CPM 154 because then you have even distribution of all the little particles, so you don't have like points in the edge that are more or less the quality that you're after in the steel. When the grain structure is perfectly evenly distributed throughout the blade, then you have a little bit better, I guess, more dependability in the structure of the steel. So that's why the CPM steels came about, I guess. I'm not a professional in powder metallurgy. This is just me reading crap on Google over the last 10 years. But the CPM version I would take, if I had the choice. But either way, 154 CM or CPM 154, I honestly believe are the best user steels out there. They are stainless, they are reasonably tough, and they hold a reasonable edge, but man is it easy to sharpen and touch up, and man does it take a satisfying edge. I love 154 CM. I absolutely love it. It's not an expensive steel. Sadly, we don't see it on a whole lot of stuff. The standard Benchmade Griptilian, well, originally it was in 440C, but it used to be in 154 CM, and then they changed it to S30V, which is probably for the better. I think people, enjoy that S30V. It's an upgrade. It kind of freshened up the Griptilian, but to me it was sad because it kind of made it boring. You see Protex definitely in 154 CM and CPM 154, and then you see it on oddball stuff. But the nice thing about it is it makes for a great fixed blade. It makes for a great large heavy-duty folding knife. It makes for a great small folding knife. It's just such a low-maintenance steel, and I think it's sadly overlooked oftentimes in the knife world. But I don't know. I feel like a lot of you guys out there who use your knives way more than I do. And if you've had experience with all of these steels, maybe you can echo what I'm saying. Maybe you agree with me. But after, I'm a mild pocket knife user. I use my knives a little bit throughout the week in my office. But then on the weekends, I really go out and use them. And I don't have a lot of 154 or CPM 154 knives, but the ones that I do have, I use. Now, the one that I'm using to represent 154 CM is the ProTech Magic 2, or Whiskers, I guess is what they call this. And I've yet to review this knife either. This was provided for directly by ProTech. I love 154 CM. I think it's great stuff. To some of you, that was probably an anticlimactic ending. You were hoping it was going to be some crazy crazy thing. But I can't give justification to any hyper exotic steel as my number one. You know, when we're talking about steels that I actually enjoy using, it's so easy for me to use 154 cm and not feel bad about it because I know how easy it is to maintain. I don't know, you know, it's like the Toyota Tacoma of steels. You just can't kill it. And I don't want to strike up any arguments in the for fans of the automotive industry, but you know, those vehicles are notorious for going over 400,000 miles and being totally fine, you know. But that's kind of how I think of this steel. Huge fan of it. So anyways, that's going to be pretty much it for the video today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, then please subscribe to my channel because there is definitely more coming. Let's go ahead and give this guy another open. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.